Welcome to Weekday Golf. I'm Preston.
I am Oliver. Am I not?
You are, yeah, last I checked. You and I have a big trip coming up this week.
Yes, we
And you
do.
decided to take a golf lesson the other day.
Yes.
Okay.
I got a golf lesson with our good buddy Nick Noya, previous guest, and we did a playing lesson. It was fantastic.
So what'd you guys do?
We basically played 9 holes, and we have 2 18-hole courses at our club. As you know, one of them is under a big-time year-long renovation, and so that's where the playing lesson was because there were fewer people on that course, which is now limited to 9 holes.
Ah,
But it's called into question for us, or it's really brought into focus for us questions about golf course design because it is so top of mind. What should we do? Why are these changes good? Why are we even changing to begin with? And so
mm-hmm.
I think this tees up our conversation today pretty nicely.
Indeed it does, because we're going to be speaking with David Rawlinson, who is a Golf Digest course rating panelist. And so I'm pretty curious to kind of get his take on what that process is like. So I just had this trip back to Philadelphia to preview Mink's PGA Championship preparations, and we stuck around a couple extra days to sneak out on some great golf courses, Merion obviously being one of them. The other one being the Wissahickon course at Philadelphia Cricket Club. It was great to play Merion, loved playing Merion, it's super fun. I kind of liked Philly Cricket better. I certainly enjoyed the Lake course better. And so you've got a course in Merion that's like 7th in the national rankings of golf courses. And why is that so high? What is it that
Hmm.
these raters look at? I'm really curious to kind of hear and I know that he's not going to talk to us specifically about his personal course rankings or even a specific course like Merion, but my idea of what makes a great golf course is probably pretty different than what a Golf Digest rater's idea of what makes a great golf course is, right?
What is your idea of greatness in a golf course?
It needs to be challenging, but that challenge needs to be somewhat fair. I've played plenty of targety golf courses that are just hard for the sake of being hard, and you get punished for a good shot kind of thing. I don't love that. Natural beauty, of course. I don't know if I stop to really consider how a course weaves through the land, but you kind of like know it does a good job of it when you see it.
Yeah,
Um, what about you? What do you think?
I place a lot of immediate impression on aesthetics. So is the course in good shape? Does it look nice? I place a lot of emphasis on the quality of the greens. So if they're running smooth and they're firm and they're fast, I will remember that more than the quality of the fairways or, where the bunkers raked nicely or the shapes of the bunkers, that sort of thing. And this probably won't come up in the conversation with David specifically, but I think you and I both pay real close attention to the culture and the vibe of the course, right? And so for
Yes.
me, it's like the people and the clubhouse and the hang. I went on this golf trip a couple years ago to Columbus and we played Scioto, which is a great golf course, Jack Nicklaus's childhood course. And the course was fantastic. But to this day, I still remember the post round hang in their traditional grill room, even more than the course. And
Mm.
so that has to matter for me because that's how I remember it. I do care a lot about challenge, fairness. I love courses that require you to hit different types of shots. Those things to me reveal themselves over time. And so I'm really curious to get David's perspective on, are you revisiting the same courses?
There's also clubhouse experiences, right? There's who doesn't love good locker room, you know?
Yeah.
I will take a moment to compliment and call out the showers at Merion, which
We should
famously
ask
and proud
David how high on the ratings water pressure in
water.
showers is.
Yeah, yeah. That stays with me, right? It's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna remember those. Sorry for the visual for all our
Big
listeners, but I'm
shower
gonna
guy.
remember those showers. Yeah. We've been in the little secret locker room at Congressional where like there's a whole bunch of recliners and TV and stuff,
Oh
all that
yeah.
kind of stuff set up. That was
Yeah.
awesome. So
Yeah. You're a shower guy. I'm a food and bev guy.
for the record, I am also a food and bev guy. I'm not
Okay.
just a
Fair enough.
shower
Fair
guy,
enough.
but okay.
We're both food and bev guys. So,
Yeah.
that
And
that
it's not
that
like
leaves
you
an
don't
impression.
also take showers, but just,
It matters less in my power rankings.
All right. So between course design and your experience at a golf course, what matters more to you?
Hmm. That is a good question. So if you were to tell me I played on a golf course, let's say in my head it was a 6 as a course, but I just had an amazing day because great foursome, fun time, weather was perfect, great showers, those types of things. I would prefer that. I'm going to want a combined score that's high and push comes to shove a little more on the hang.
Yep.
You?
I think I agree. How about that?
Okay. What I think we need to see is like a hang rating as well.
Well, maybe weekday golf should be like the hang raiders.
Let's call it something else, but yeah, let's do that.
If you if you are the general manager at a golf club and would like weekday golf to come and rate your hang, we're available.
Okay, so we have this discussion with David coming up. I am curious to understand from him, how do you create an objective scorecard for something that to me seems by definition subjective, right? So
Mhm.
it will be fascinating to get a peek into how they do that. We are happy to begin this conversation about golf course design with David Rawlinson, Golf Digest panelist. And as a quick disclaimer, David is not here to discuss personal rankings, but he can drop some knowledge on how great architecture works. So, welcome, David.
Thanks
Yes.
for having me. If I've done myself any services, that you'll have no idea where I rank any of the courses that we discuss or any of the holes. I'm by no means a golf course expert on architecture, but I think there's things that I've learned, and hopefully it'll be a fun conversation as we get after it a little bit here.
For sure. Can we ask this starting out, how did you get this job?
Over a number of years, I'd played a variety of golf courses around the country and had gotten linked up with a Golf Digest panelist. I'm an ophthalmologist by trade. Was down at Kiawah Island at an eye conference, and there was a gentleman that had a Merion golf bag that I had gotten paired up with, and he had speaking at the conference. And we got talking about architecture and pretty much the rest of the 18 holes. I was fortunate enough for him to say, "Hey, you should really apply. There's somewhat of a rigorous process to go through." And then I was fortunate enough to be accepted on the panel, and that was back in 2018. And so I've had the privilege of playing a number of different golf courses over the years. And again, looking forward to a conversation here.
Awesome, as are we. And has it been fun?
Yeah, it's been a blast. With Golf Digest, at least, the way that the scoring works, they'd like you to have to play a certain number of golf courses, and ideally the minimum would be around 8 to 10 per year. I have not played one that I thought was devoid of any value. I think every golf course you can find, some merit in, some good things. At the end of the day, we're basically looking at art and strategy, and how an architect presents that design is sometimes limited by budget and things like that. But the course that I've played, it's been a real privilege, and I'm thankful for all of the different facilities that have housed panelists on their courses in the past.
Sure. And so what are you looking at when you're coming out as a Golf Digest panelist? What are you looking for?
So I think one thing that's important to just mention is we're not critics. And that's maybe the most important part. This is not a situation we're looking to kind of pick apart a golf course. I think you're looking at certain elements and trying to find out what things that make each golf course unique. And I'm going to sell you real quick first on why I think ratings are helpful. I think people like to rate things. This can be your favorite musical artist. There's a lot of things even on Golf Digest that I would look at and say, hey, I'd probably have things different. And I think it's useful discussion, right? Whether you've got Cypress, Augusta, Pine Valley, I don't know as though for the average person, that's as important, which golf course is 1, 2, or 3. I think that the average person, Golf Digest came out again with the places to play where they give public golf courses a star rating, the top 100 public. I think that you're highlighting golf courses that may not get the national recognition. I think that's really important. Best in state rankings. So if you're the 15, 20 digit handicap, you're getting into golf for the first time, you want to see a golf course that's architecturally interesting, that makes you think a little bit, that presents you with different options. I think that we can, through that medium, spotlight those golf courses a little bit. I think that there's no reason why the public shouldn't have the opportunity to play and experience good golf course design, because I think it presents you with different challenges, different thoughts, and it's a more cerebral activity. The way we do it at Golf Digest, we've got a number of different categories that we rate courses on. Generally, it's a 1 to a 10, and they've got this, essentially it's a formula for adding these things together. Most of the categories are going to be objective. There's a couple that are going to be subjective, and I know we're going to delve maybe into that a little bit more as we go. One thing that I think, if you're just a person getting into golf course architecture, and if you go on Golf Club Atlas and kind of read through some of the threads there, it can be a little bit overwhelming. If you want something that's really easy to remember for folks, Jeff Shackelford wrote a nice book. It's called Golf Course Architecture for Normal People. And his thing is the acronym RED. The R is for remember. So you're playing a course. When you're done with playing that course, do you remember every hole? Did half the holes look exactly like the other half the holes, or does each hole have sort of a memorable, distinctive part to it? I think that's an important part of a good golf course design. Is it a course that you'd play every day? And does it present you with a variety of challenge? Whether it's, you look at a green complex, can it have a handful of different ways you could pin it so it plays differently?
Sorry,
every day.
Is that the E?
That's the E, yeah.
In red?
Yeah,
okay.
E in red. I could maybe argue that that's a little bit of an emotional decision. Like, I could sell you on the idea of all right, I go play Kiowa Island. It's a 3 or 4 club wind. That I would argue is a fantastic golf course, but it may not be one that you'd want to play every day. And the last of the RED acronym is this a place that you take your dog for a walk? And that's going to, right. So is there good land movement? Is it an interesting site? Does it have good topography? Is it would your dog enjoy going for a walk in this particular site? And so if you want something that's super easy to remember, RED is I think a good one. I'll kind of dive in. Maybe the most important category is going to be shot options. How does the golf course present a variety of options involving risk and reward? And how does it require you to play a number of different shots? So the golf courses, of course, is going to be it's a complex playing field. You've got to have some strategic thought, skillful tactics, and a great golf course is going to present you with different options, whether it's on the tee, shots ultimately into greens, and then potentially different abilities to recover if you do, because of course, we're going to be missing plenty of greens over time. Even the pros.
I don't know what you're talking about. I always hit every green.
Do you have different options if you do miss a green or playing into greens, let's say, for instance? So,
and David, quick question on that. Do you tend to look favorably on courses that consistently do that on as many holes as possible?
That's a great question. So there's actually a scorecard that they have where you can grade each individual hole on itself. I tend to not do that. I tend to look at the sum of the parts. Is over the course of the round, am I sitting there on a tee, approaching shots into green, thinking, hey, I've got a bevy of different options here to play a shot. I think there's great golf courses that present you with options around the green. I think that there's certain golf courses that are going to be, more parkland, that are going to say, hey, you missed your approach shot into this green, so we're going to then make you play this other type of shot. So when I look at that, I think I'll look back at my round and think, how many times did I have to make a decision? Was I forced to play certain shots regardless of the land? And I think the more a golf course can get me thinking about different options that I have to play a shot, I think the better. If I, after the round, I look at shots that I make and think, hey, I just should have hit it straighter. That's not, I don't think, a really good mark of good golf course architecture. I think that there's great golf courses present you with a number of different options where you generally can have a shot that's going to allow you to take on maybe a little bit more risk, and shots that allow you to maybe play it a little bit safer. And so
Yeah.
you having different opportunities to challenge certain hazards, I think would be maybe the easiest way to expound on that.
Yeah. Can I just ask a really specific question?
Yeah.
How, like blind shots where like you need the help of an experienced player there or a caddy, are those considered gimmicky or can they work?
Both, maybe. Um,
Yeah.
I this is a personal preference, but I think that I have enjoyed historically playing blind shots. You see that at like, Fisher's Island, Stream Song Black. There's a number of golf courses that present a blind shot. And I think that there is an element of it's fun. You walk up, the number 8 at Pebbles got, a blind tee shot. So you hit the ball and then you walk up and you say, all right, where is this ball? And so there's an element of an excitement, right? Whether it's you're hitting to a fairway, you're hitting into a green of where's my shot going to turn out? Where's my ball going to be? What am I going to look at next? So I think that there can be a way in which that's used tactfully. I also think that there's a way that maybe that can be a little bit gimmicky. There's a number of different things, whether it's centerline bunkers, false fronts, trees in the middle of the fairway, where turtleback greens maybe, where you say, all right, these are things that we can use sparingly throughout the round, but maybe not on every single hole because it'd be redundant. The next is going to be challenge. Historically, if you look back at the kind of the old school publications, this was a category that was resistance to scoring. They used to publish lists that were the top 100 hardest golf courses, which I think was objectively maybe not a great thing because I think that golf is meant to be enjoyed, not endured. And if you come off a course exhilarated, that usually is a good sign that regardless of what you shot, you could say, hey, I had a good time playing. Maybe I was asked to make certain shots and I didn't make them, but next time around, maybe I've got better, the chops to do that. So for me, I rarely try to keep score when I evaluate a golf course. I think how I play that day really shouldn't have a big bearing on how I evaluate a golf course because it shouldn't be about me. It should be if I'm playing, let's say Olympic and I get absolutely chewed up, it's not the golf course's fault. It's, it's my fault for not hitting the shots that are demanded. I think that there's certain elements of design though, because this is really a measure of how fair a golf course is, right? So for a 5 handicap, a scratch golfer playing from the back tees, maybe not the championship tees, but the back tees. The question is how challenging is this course while still being fair? And, I could design a golf course where you've got 20-yard wide fairways, you've got no rough, and then just dense trees. So the only option you've got there is to hit it straight. And that's a tough golf course. But I don't think that would merit well on the challenge simply because it's not fair. It's penal. Again, it's going to go back to shot options. You don't have a lot of shot options there. You can make a golf course incredibly difficult, but I don't think that's necessarily what Golf Digest is looking here. If you've seen, the TGL Golf League, where they're playing some of those shots like under a bridge, through a cave. I mean, those are incredibly difficult shots, but that's not going to make up for a good golf course.
Right. So what are examples of things that constitutes challenging?
Standing over a shot. I mean, a great example is to an Olympic. You've got a tilted fairway, you've got a long approach to a perched up green. And if you stand over a shot and say, boy, I executed on the first one. I know what I have to do here. This is a difficult shot. The course presents itself well to executing that shot. It's fair, but you've got to pull it off essentially. So the more times a golf course does that, I think the better. And there's some golf courses that are going to maybe present that more times throughout the course of a round. And so the second one is going to be layout variety. So we're talking here like you've got a diversity of green sites, green shapes, allow for a variety of pin positions, hole playability. And this is kind of an objective thing, right? So holes that are going to be different lengths. You got long, medium, short, par 3, 4s, 5s, different configurations. You've got dog legs, right, left, straight, hazard placements, green contours. And this is sometimes tough to tell, but holes, it's helpful to know where the prevailing winds are. So holes are going to be going with the wind, crosswind. You don't want to have every hole going the same direction ideally on a property. It's nice to have a little bit of, variety. you don't want it to feel like a Nickelback album, right? You want it to feel like every hole is kind of the same, right?
I had
One of our
not
local
considered that analogy before, but thank you for
No.
introducing
So,
that to our
If this
lexicon.
course was a golf course, it would be
Yeah.
Nickelback.
This is such
So-
a Nickelback golf course.
yeah, there's the local course where the joke is that the architect made a really good green on number one. They had a, tilted from back to front with a ridge that kind of bisected it. And the joke was that he liked it so much he made 17 more. And
Right.
you don't want that, right? You want variety. You want to feel like green complexes are memorable. This is where it goes back to Jeff Shackelford's red, where you're going to remember every hole because they're different. They're not the same. It's not like the same hole copied over and over and over again. When we first get accepted out of the panel with Golf Digest, Ron Whitten, he was previously with the panel. He had designed a handful of golf courses, including Erin Hills. He gives us this thought exercise where we pick an ideal golf course for each of these categories. And for me, it was Tobacco Road. And it still is to this day, where that golf course, I don't know if you guys played there, but there's an incredible amount of cohesion. Every hole is completely different, very different green complexes. I've played it once, but I can still walk in my mind through that entire layout because each hole was so different. The next category, and we're getting close to the end, is this aesthetics. This isn't one that's going to be a little bit more subjective. And at the end of the day, golf course architecture is like art, right? Some people like certain things because of the way that it is. And some people would value certain things more than others. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder a little bit, where, do you prefer artificial waterfalls? Is that your thing? Do you like a dramatic waterfall behind hole 18? Do you like playing golf in the mountains, cityscapes, ocean? This can be aesthetic. So if you've got really nice mow lines, well manicured bunkers, this is the aesthetics of the golf course, whether it's, the property itself or how they maintain the golf course. It can add to aesthetic value. And that's going to be something that, again, is very subjective. So as a little bit more of a left-brained individual, that's a little bit harder for me to compare because, I could easily make an argument that certain people are suckers for mountain golf, or some people think that, lake or ocean views are the best. The next is going to be conditioning. And this is an interesting category because really every golf course can achieve this. And it's how fast and firm is the golf course. So how fast and firm are the fairways, the greens, how true are the putts? It's important to note what this doesn't include. And this is essentially lush green grass, right? So you're thinking like Augusta, and Augusta is, I think, in some ways, a great golf course for people to watch. And I think in other ways, maybe not such a great golf course for people to watch. From, we see the way that it's presented is they've got a budget that really no other course can compare to, right? You've got over the course of the Masters, you've got all these Class A superintendents that come, and essentially they're labor. So they come from these fancy high-end clubs. They'll come to Augusta. They're doing work for free. These guys will be on their hands and knees doing ground labor and, picking up every blemish. They'll be in the bunkers with scissors, cutting the edge of the bumper so that the edge is absolutely perfect. And that's tough to replicate, right? And so, Augusta's got clay soil. It's really not great from a design. Most places couldn't build a great golf course there. It's going to be either too wet, doesn't drain well, too wet, too dry. And Augusta is able to maintain the phenomenal conditions that it has simply because of the superintendent, the budget that they have. But the issue that I would see is you get some of these people that watch the way it's presented during the Masters and then go back to their home superintendent and says, hey, why does our golf course not look as green as Augusta? And I think that a lot of golf courses can achieve the level of conditioning where it can play firm and fast, but you may not see that golf course, even though I think the playability is phenomenal, you may not see that golf course look the same way that you see Augusta, for instance, look on TV. So the last one is going to be character. This is another subjective category. This is how well does a golf course exude ingenuity and uniqueness? And how does it have profound characteristics that you'd consider outstanding for its era? So again, just like with conditioning, what it doesn't include is important here. And that's going to be if this golf course has hosted the US Open, if the golf course has a massive clubhouse, an exclusive membership service, locker rooms, a fantastic shower, things like that. I can give you two examples just to sort of drive home the point. The one is going to be a golf course that ultimately kind of captured the minimalist naturalism movement, which is Sandhills. So this is back in 1995, kind of a turning point for modern golf, where historically there was these heavy manufactured courses of the late 20th century where you've got a lot more land movement and it maybe didn't look as natural. And you've got Corin Crenshaw, who went out to this site literally in the middle of nowhere in the Nebraska Sandhills. And they used a minimalist land first approach. They got a great piece of land. And it was kind of a bold move at the time. The thought was, hey, nobody might come and play here. They've got blowout bunkers. It looks very natural, rugged, minimal earth moving. And they figured that nobody will come play. It's too far of a distance. It's not a major metropolitan golf course, but this course kind of became the key to success for all the courses that came. It led to Bandon Dunes. It led to Sand Valley, Stream Song, these destination courses that give you a lot of, playability, wide quarters, options off the tee, options playing around the greens, into the greens. And this was kind of the first course of its era to sort of take that mindset and put it into practice, essentially. So once you take all these characteristics, and I can rip through them really quick here. So you've got shot options, you've got challenge, layout variety, aesthetics, conditioning, and character. Once you take all these, you assign a score to each of those, and there's a statistician that works with Golf Digest to essentially determine power for the study, and they come up with the final ranking for that golf course.
Is there a category that you always enjoy giving your perspective on, and one that you find more challenging to give your perspective on?
I don't believe that I have a challenge giving a perspective on any of the categories specifically. I've been doing this, I think, long enough that I feel like I have a handle on it. I do think that there's more subjectivity, certainly to a category like aesthetics, to a category like character. I think that, conditioning, there's, challenge, I think shot options, those I think that are a little bit more, it's always going to have some subjectivity to it, of course, but I think those tend to be a little bit more well-defined.
What do golf raters notice about a course that somebody playing it might not be thinking about or noticing on their own?
I think ground contour is one, and the way in which an architect can use that to influence strategy and difficulty. And one of my favorite examples of that is the reverse Camber hole on Olympic. So the fourth at Olympic is a great example of this. The design, you've got the hole's going to move from the right to the left, and the slope's going to move from the left to the right. So right-handed players, it's going to be helpful to try to hit a draw, around the trees into the slope. Even then, that ball's still going to want to maybe kick a little bit off to the left, which is against the direction of play. It's fun playing with somebody like my brother-in-law, Greg, because he tends to hit more of a cut, whereas I tend to hit more of a draw. And it's interesting on that hole, especially to watch the, compare and contrast the interaction of the slope with his shot versus my shot. And then off of that hole, then too, you've got an interesting challenge because you've got a challenging approach with the ball. If you're a right-handed player like myself, your ball is going to be below your feet. So it's it's a nice challenge then too off of that. And those are the things that I think, if you're not paying attention to it, it can be a little bit annoying, but looking at how the architect uses the land in that respect can be, I think it's fascinating.
And it may not surprise you to know that we noticed that feature as well.
Right. One other thing that's helpful to just note, when I evaluate a golf course, a lot of times what I'll do is if I do hit an errant shot, I'll play that ball, but I'll also hit a ball where maybe quote unquote the architect would intend, or at least at the very minimum, just take a look from where an ideal landing spot would be and think of, hey, how would this approach play from this certain spot, as opposed to if you've got an off day with the driver, it's not as helpful for somebody to evaluate a golf course just playing from the trees. So Golf Digest encourages you to drop a ball, play it from where you are, maybe play a second ball from the fairway or an ideal line, and then compare and contrast.
Yeah. So David, that point about contours is interesting because I feel like with a lot of focus on restoration recently, I hear a lot of architects talking about, we're going to go back to using the land the way the original architects intended it to, et cetera, et cetera. That to me seems like can be a good thing, but not necessarily a good thing. Like maybe the original terrain doesn't provide a compelling way to play the hole. Maybe there's some manufactured design that could actually make it more interesting. Why is that in and of itself a good thing, I guess?
I think it goes back to the routing and how do
Yeah.
you use the landforms within a certain property? I mean, Olympic, for instance, you've got this, the clubhouse is perched up on the hill and everything just drapes down, towards the lake. So I don't think it's the land has to be interesting, but the way that the architect uses that land and the natural forms of that land is how maybe I would view it. I'm not sure that I
Yeah.
necessarily answered your question here.
My thinking is like, well, why is restoration a desirable thing to begin with? Right? Land evolves. Thoughts on what constitutes good design evolves. Why does going to what it was 100 years ago in and of itself seem like a good thing? And so the contoured thing I bring up because it usually is one of the main things listed with the original design.
Yeah, I would think. I mean, I look at you call it a restoration or renovation of like Pinehurst number 2,
Yeah.
right? It's been a parkland golf course, for a number of years, and you did not have nearly the options off of the tee. You've got thicker rough, surrounding the greens, and now you've got a golf course that has more playability around the greens. I think that it's exposed more of the natural land around the holes where you can see balls bouncing around, left, right, back, over the green. And I would argue that that makes for more interesting golf.
Yeah. All right. So we've already started talking about individual holes, which helps bring this to life. We've got a list of famous holes that I think a lot of golfers are familiar with. Maybe you can help us understand them a little better. So, for example, Pebble 8, you brought this up before, blind shot. This hole seems to be incredibly beloved. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, well, I mean, you could make an argument either way. Strategically, you could argue it's a little bit of a forced layup. I like the blind tee shot. I think that it's a neat characteristic. When I've played Pebble, I always thought that was fun, walking up the hill. It's the only blind tee shot. It's climactic to climb the hill and see where a ball's landed. You get this vista view of the Pacific Ocean and the cliff. Play too conservatively, of course, and you've got like 200 yards over water to a small green with breezing winds. So it's a heroic shot for sure. It does give you some interesting options. You could maybe argue that if that hole and maybe that somewhat of a forced layup was on a different site, maybe that would be, people might call that a little bit more gimmicky. But I think that when your forced layup maybe is the Pacific Ocean, I think that people maybe give that a little bit more grace, and hence why maybe it's a little bit more beloved. I think Jack Nicklaus called it the best second shot.
All right, so here's a story that Oliver, I don't even know if I've told you, but I've only played Pebble twice. Once was a Bluebird day in my 30s. The first time I played Pebble, I was maybe 15 years old, and my dad took me down there. And it was sideways rain, pouring rain, and I think the wind was probably blowing 35, 40 miles an hour. And we got out to the 7th hole, the hole before the hole we're talking about now, which is, as we all know, a short par 3, and going straight into the teeth of this wind. And I had to, as a 15-year-old, I think I hit like a 3-iron to try to get the ball to the green. I'll never forget the round because it was kind of like, Dad saying, "Hey, we got the tee time at Pebble. We're going and we're playing, and I don't care if it's raining. This is what we're doing." And so that kind of would stay with me for the rest of my life. But that's a very short hole. That is a very short par 3, obviously in a very picturesque location. So can a short par 3 like number 7 at Pebble be considered a world-class golf hole, and why?
My maybe hot take is I'm a believer that every course needs one short par 3 and one short par 4. I'd argue that a blend of short par 3s and long par 3s and short par 4s and long par 4s is critical to be a great golf course, just because of the strategic questions that you can ask on those different holes. Pasatiempo, Olympic have those. Pebble is largely due to the setting and the wind. As you had mentioned, it can play a number of different ways. If you're going to have a small hole, you've got to do a good job of having somewhat of defenses. And Pebbles, all around the property, of course, you've got small greens, well defended with bunkers. Just as a long par 3, you're going to have more generous green, more room. A shorter par 3's got to have defenses in its own. It just asks a different question of the golfer.
So talking about risk reward, a hole like Augusta 13, how do you assess whether a hole that carries risk rewards sort of similar to that, can that be a great hole?
Well, I think risk reward in general is just a critical tenet of good golf course architecture. On 13, strategically, the closer you get to the water, you get a threefold advantage. You get a flatter lie, closer to the green, and you get a little bit of a better angle. The further away, so the less risk you take off of the tee shot, you're further away from the hole. Ball's above your feet, worse angle of the green. You really need to aim it at Rays Creek, and just hope that it draws. And so the tee shot specifically is a great test of risk and reward. And so I think it introduces a bit, if you bite off more on the tee shot, you see these guys hitting these shorter clubs into that green. Whereas if you're not taking as much and you're taking maybe a less aggressive line, then you're going to pay for it on the back end. There's no free lunch. Number 5, I think, is one of the more underrated holes on the entire golf course. It's, dog leg left. You've got a bunker that guards the inside turn that players can't carry. And this is something that people are going to see on their own home courses. So you've got dog leg left, bunkers on the inside. The green is nearly unreachable from the bunkers. The tee shot corridor is very wide, right? So you've got a lot of room to the right. And if you want to bail out, play it safe. But then the further right that you go, you're going to have a longer approach. It plays a quarter shot over par despite having no water hazards and only a few bunkers. And that bunker on the inside turn of a dog leg is it's a subtle but interesting architectural feature that you'll see. It's a simple design, but then, as a pro, you're thinking, well, how close do I want to get to that bunker?
What about the hole before 13, number 12 at Augusta, short par 3, lots of drama there all the time, every year. If you were a rater, how would that factor into your thinking?
I think 12 is great. It's like 155 yards. You've got some swirly winds. That hole plays sideways, short left to deep right. The hole's designed, just like 13. So if you're a right-handed player, if you hit a weak shot, you open that club face just a little bit, your carry number drastically increases. So it's 20 yards different from the front left to the front right, but it looks like you're hitting at the green dead square. The other interesting part about that is the back left. Let's say you've got the Sunday pin, you're looking at like a buck 65 or so. You pull it just a little bit, and all of a sudden you're in the azaleas,
right.
And that's a great time. Even if you don't play it towards that Sunday pin, you play a little bit less, and you tug it a tiny bit, you're off the green if you play to the middle of the green, which is, I think, why that hole is great. It's subtle, interesting, difficult. So you got to get the correct yardage, but not just the correct yardage. You get the correct yardage to the correct part of the green. And so for a right-handed player, it's fascinating because it's going to play into your misses. You leave the face open, it's going to go shorter. You tug it a little bit, it's going to go longer and end up in the spots as the architect had designed to be punishing.
Okay, how about when courses introduce quirkiness? So thinking old course, road hole.
See, I don't know if that's quirky. So
okay,
there are certain elements, sure, blind drive across the out of bounds. You got a few yards between the back tee and the pavement and wall. I don't think it makes for an easy, or if you want to call it fair, par 4. It's a blind shot. It's the only one at the old course. I think if the hole was a little bit longer and it was called a par 5, I don't think it would be as controversial. The green is well defended. Road bunker for sure has ended many people's rounds. To the right of the green, you've got plenty of room to bail out there. So if you don't want to play out of the road bunker, if you don't want to take on that risk, you certainly have the opportunity to not do that. So a couple interesting notes about Scottish or British golf courses in general. I love the charm of the intimate routing within the city. Ely would be, another one that's great over there, where you feel like it's really intertwined with the rock wall, the pedestrians. You've got free roam, where the pedestrians oftentimes will walk on the golf courses you're playing. In my mind, that is charming as opposed to being secluded and more walled off from the surrounding land. I think it's a fascinating golf hole. Certainly if you play too many shots over out of bounds or old railroad, facilities, that can be a little bit quirky, but maybe it's something that we forgive. North Berwick is another one where you've got the stone wall, that you have to contend with. And I think that in that presentation, I would look at it maybe more as a little bit charming. Certainly, if you're playing against a 7-11, I think that people may not look at it the same way. but I think it's tastefully in the way that that hole is presented.
You said something that reminded me of a question I wanted to ask, which is how important is the par of a hole in your assessment of it?
This is something that I've kind of came to appreciate as time has gone on. I really don't think a golf course needs to have 18 holes or be a par 70 or 72. There's more golf courses that are going to be 12-hole golf courses. And on some sites, you probably can get 12 great holes, or you could squeeze in 18 mediocre holes. The newer golf course, which is a Gil Hanse design, this is a Hoopie Match Club in Georgia. It's solely match play, so there's no par, which I think is neat because it gives the architect the freedom to design half par holes. Your goal is to make golf holes that are fun and enjoyable without regard for par, so people aren't getting worried about what they shoot. Match play, of course, is going to feel a little bit different. And this sort of lends itself into an interesting strategy component too. There's sort of a philosophy of thinking called Decade, which is Scott Fawcett, Lou Stagner, and they've done a lot of work on chasing angles, finding the optimal targets. A lot of the tour guys use Decade, Bryson, Will Zalatoris. It's very interesting stuff, but I'm going to apply it here in how you can, depending on where you are in the match, be more aggressive with your shot decisions based on if you're up in the round, if you're down, where your opponent's at. The Decade math essentially will tell you should aim more towards the center of the green to minimize the number of times that you short side yourself. This is sort of a big simplification, but we know that a long putt's easier than a shorter chip. And I think the only difference is in match play is your lower average score is still going to be by hitting more greens. You're going to make more pars, less bogeys, but you're also going to make less birdies. So I think the reason why this is kind of important is you look at situationally what's going on. Maybe it's worth taking on more risk, but chasing the angle generally is going to come with a higher score, as you're tending to find more rough, bunkers, trees, things like that. And I think when it comes to playing a golf course in metal play as opposed to in stroke play, I think that having the par not be well established is helpful, and B, match play I think helps to bring out maybe more of those risk reward decisions. Whereas I think if you're playing in without par, you're not playing to keep a score at the end of the round, or your buddies aren't asking you what you shot, you can take on a little more risk. And I think that's more fun. And at the end of the day, we're all playing golf to be enjoyable as a fun thing that we like to do.
That is a good segue to what, in your opinion, makes a hole strategically rich?
Strategically risk is really going to come back to the categories that we talked about before, right? Like shot options, layout variety, challenge, character, conditioning. And I think a few notes about bunkers and hazards are important as well. In general, I think that fewer bunkers or hazards placed in interesting positions makes for interesting golf architecture. So good architecture is like, it's like good art or good music. You can appreciate it more over the course of time. I'm going to steal a quote from Alistair McKenzie, where he says, in general, a hazard placed in an exact position where a player would naturally go is the most interesting situation, as a decision needs to be made, whether you go over it or around it. And the objective of that hazard is to make golf more interesting, not necessarily to punish. Centerline bunkers can certainly be one where wise minds might disagree. They may be polarizing, to a handful of people, but I don't think that anyone would agree that they're anything other than potentially thought-provoking. Stream Song is a unique resort where you've got Gil Hanse, you've got a Corin Crenshaw design, and you've got a Doak design. All three of these separate architectural firms used a centerline bunker effectively on their golf course. And similar to number 5 at Augusta, it's a small, subtle change, but the more you're getting a player to sit on a tee and say, boy, what do I do? And if they play that golf hole, let's say they hit into the bunker, you're going to make that golfer excited to go back and say, you know what, I'd like to play that hole again and aim to a different spot. And I think the more times that an architect can get a player to do that, I think the better the overall, or the more intriguing at least the architectural design. Because we all want to have courses that we can come back to and have interest and play again. I mean, that's what inspires us to keep, getting after it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I want to ask you about trees. Seems to be a lot of debate about courses that were more tree lined or had a lot of density of trees. And now there's a lot of removal of trees and opening up views and different types of shots. What are your thoughts on that?
And we should preface this by saying, I love my trees. I love our cypress trees.
I love your cypress trees as well. I think that used tactfully, trees can be very good. I think they frame the hole. So from a visual standpoint, the trees at Olympic are, I mean, they're gorgeous. They frame the holes. They also protect. You miss your shot to one way or the other, you're going to have to thread the needle between those particular trees. I think that there is a lot of golf courses, my home golf course in particular, where there is an overgrowth of trees. And I think that there are many times where by removing trees, you can open up topography of land and introduce more beauty to the golf course. Sleepy Hollow is a great example of a golf course that's really a darling on social media, where Gail Hance seemed to come back to him. But you look at the work that he's done there, and the views that you had, the vistas that you had of the Hudson were completely stifled. I think trees can be great as a background. I'm a native Michigander, and our trees turn very pretty colors in the fall, and that can add to the aesthetic. But I'm not a big fan of trees obstructing the line of natural play. Like if
Sure.
I'm in the fairway and there's a tree overhanging a green, where if you're in the center of the fairway, I think that you should have an unobstructed line to play to a golf hole. And the same applies to tee shots as well. I don't think that trees that create these narrow chutes that players have to hit around is necessarily intriguing. I know people might debate that, but I think that the more options that a player has presents more variety. And I think that makes golf less emotionally and mentally taxing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, David, where would you say experienced panelists genuinely disagree? Like, you got objectivity and subjectivity sort of interplaying here.
So the truth is, I don't know, because we're not supposed to talk with each other about
Okay.
certain design element. But I can highlight a couple of things that I think are hot topics. Penal deep rough would be, certainly one. Forced carries, blind shots, centerline trees, just trees in general, as we discussed earlier, centerline bunkers, false fronts, maybe turtleback greens. You could throw that into the list. But I think those are all, because people have different tastes for certain things. Do you like a parkland, well manicured golf course with heavily articulated bunkers? Do you like a minimalism, naturalism course with these blowout bunkers and well integrated native areas like you'd see over at Sandhills or at Stream Song? There's always going to be an inherent quality of the aesthetics and character that's really just going to be subjective. So, and it might be worth just defining the term. So like naturalism is going to be this, as people mostly define, it's going to be these chunky, wispy bunkers, long, flowy contours that kind of integrate in and out of the golfing features, versus minimalism, which is basically just a minimal amount of land moved. So like the bare minimum that you need to do to create a golf course. Whistling Straits is a great example of very contrasting styles, where you've got naturalism, a golf course that hey, look, it's been there for 100, 200 years on on Lake Michigan. It's got the wispy grass, lots of contours, so it's a very naturalistic feeling course. But Pete Dye had to move a metric ton of sand and dirt to basically get it to look like it was. It used to be an Air Force base, and so that was a very flat piece of land, and he moved a lot of dirt to get it to look that way.
Yeah.
I think the routing is always going to be critical, but then how do you prefer the routing? Do you like the old school courses where you've got this more intimate and connected with the rest of the course, where you can stand on one green, see several other greens and tees, fairways, where you see your buddies playing up on a different hole? And I think that there's a lot of connectivity to that.
Yes.
And
I like that.
Green, you see, hey, I can see these other guys on these three different tees where you come together. It isn't necessarily a pinch point, at the golf course, but maybe it's an interesting architectural feature. And this might go back to what we were talking about before about using the natural land. Maybe there's an interesting topographical, like a hillside where we should play up to the hillside, around the hillside, over and down off of this hillside, because it's an interesting feature on the land. Versus do you like just being out in the middle of nowhere where this feeling is seclusion? Do you place a high value on isolation, where you may have to take a cart between holes, where there's a long tee to green, transition where you're driving and you won't see another group the entire day? There's plenty of courses that I've played that place a high value on that, like Clear Creek Tahoe would be a fantastic example of that, where you you will likely not see another person that entire day. Like a Chicago Golf Club is a great routing. It's on a tighter property. Same thing with, Merion, where you are a little bit more constrained. It doesn't have this massive scale like a course like Yale, where you've got just these, massive landforms. You can build these, very, very wide fairways. And, the architect's going to do the best for that land with what they are presented with. And so I think it's important to judge it with that in mind.
Yeah. Before you jumped on, Preston and I were chatting about what we appreciate in golf course experiences. And for us, listeners of the show and friends of ours will know that we highly value sort of the vibe and the atmosphere, right? Like those don't really sit in the ratings. Obviously, that matters a lot to a lot of people, a lot of golfers. How do you contextualize that in how you view a golf course?
I can't. When I evaluate a golf course, I can't take that into account, and there's so many different ways people enjoy golf. And, I'm coming here maybe waxing poetically about different shot options and, certain criteria to look at a golf course. But by no means does someone need to understand any design considerations to have fun playing golf. To a lot of players, you got Pro V1s on the range, you got a good shower, good locker room, maybe a great view of the golf course to have drinks afterwards. Good food and drink might be just as important or maybe more than the actual golf. And I don't think that's unreasonable, to say. We all enjoy golf for different reasons, and we're all lucky enough to have the opportunity to play. I do think, though, still it is important to have an element of decision-making in the golf course, and I think that golfers would do well to, at least when you play golf, to be aware of maybe some of those characteristics. But again, for me, with the vibe on a golf course, it's hard because that becomes a little bit more emotional, right? So if I'm playing a golf course and I say, hey, this place, here's where Tiger hit this shot, I think that maybe lends itself more to, maybe emotion. And you look at like an exclusivity of a club, or if they've got, this one place I played in Texas, you'd play the golf course and every handful of holes, every like 6 holes, they'd have a smoker, right? And there'd be like pulled pork, there'd be brisket. I mean, of course, it's hard.
You're making me hungry, David. It's lunchtime out here on the West
right?
Coast.
And you're like, it's like, hey, this is all you can eat. We've got cornbread for you. We've got this, that, and the other. And that's a meaningful part of the vibe. And that should matter to a lot of golfers. You look at like Golf Advisor. I read some of the reviews on Golf Advisor, and those are the important things. Looking at like, hey, is this place green? Is it well manicured? Does it look pretty? That's more important to people. And I think that may create a little bit of a vibe. I would rather play. There are a couple courses that I've played over the years where maybe they looked a little bit more beat up, but they're these classic, designs, don't have the vibe. They may be like a municipal golf course. And I say, man, this is a really cool place to play for those reasons. Whereas I think maybe your average golfer might not see as much value in that.
Yeah. One man's Nickelback is another man's Rolling Stones, I guess.
There you go.
There you have it.
Okay, David, we're going to put you through the lightning round. Are you ready for the lightning round?
We can lightning around it. Yeah.
These are short answers, no more than 5 words, just whatever comes to your mind. Okay.
Sure.
All right, here we go. What is the most underrated design feature of a golf course?
Drainage, for sure.
Ooh.
Underappreciated. If you don't have it, a lot of times we take for granted good drainage.
Yeah.
Because it leans itself to, whether you got sub air on your greens, you've got firm, fast conditions. If you don't have good drainage, and I know that's one of the toughest things in over the years listening to podcasts, and listening to superintendents and architects talk about the value of having. I'm sorry, I'm way more than 5 seconds.
That's more than 5 words, David. That's more than 5 words.
I'm learning
passion.
Drainage, we got it.
All right, done. Move on.
What makes a par 3 memorable?
Decision making.
2. That was like
like
a
that.
hyphenated word. 1 word. That was good. Perfect.
It's a great answer.
What is the most overrated thing golfers focus on?
I'm going to say conditioning in the traditional sense.
Mm-hmm.
Firm or lush? Talking about golf
Lush.
courses here.
Yeah, lush, 100%.
That was fast. That was a fast answer.
Yeah.
I like that.
Well, I mean, look at Fisher's Island.
Yeah.
Is brown, but it's fantastic.
Right.
Right? The old course is brown, fantastic playability. Brown and fast versus green and lush.
Okay.
Well, it was soft.
Is walkability underrated?
I think it's appropriately rated.
Okay.
Fair.
For myself, I do value walkability. Intimate routing, walkability is important.
Template hole you could play forever.
Probably a Redan.
One design element average golfers should notice more.
Contouring, land movement.
The toughest thing to evaluate objectively.
Separating out the vibe and the feeling of the golf course.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, last one in the lightning round.
Or character. I think character's tough. Can I give you a slightly longer answer on this one?
Sure.
Okay. Because again, you go and play some of these golf courses and there's history, there's heritage, and the clubhouse may be fantastic and it visually adds to the aesthetic. Teasing that away from the golf course is critical.
Got it.
Yep.
Last question of the lightning round. What does great often get confused with?
History.
Congratulations, you survived the lightning round.
We did it.
Preston and I are really driven by this concept of the soul of golf and what it means to us. What does the soul of the game mean to you? How would you define it?
I'm a big public golf fan. Good, interesting golf is not something that should be inaccessible to people. It reminds me of a time. So I used to go with my wife down to Kiawah Island every year for a medical conference. And this course in Charleston, it's bisected by the highway. And we'd always drive by and there's this mundane piece of land, flat bunkers, these flat pancake circular greens. And it's the Charleston Muni, and it's a Muni by every definition of the word. They got this big financial investment, was able to redo all the bunkers and greens. The approaches and green complexes got transformed into these bold, heavily contoured greens that inspired by Seth Rayner, who did, considerable amount of work in the low country, which is interesting because he's, most of the work that he's done it's all private. So it's inaccessible. And suddenly you've got this relatively minor investment. We went from this fun golf course with minimal strategic value and shot interest to an incredibly interesting, accessible, and fun golf course that you can walk for, under $50. I've got an 8-year-old who's very into golf and using slopes and contours. It's because he's basically playing what I would play with hickories. It's a ground game largely. And it's fun to watch him at our home course play the ball around the ground and watch him navigate it. And I know if we went there, he would just have an absolute blast. And I guess if I was to sort of summarize how I look at good golf architecture as one thing, it's kind of like if you have shower thoughts. Like we all have these conversations that we had with somebody maybe earlier in the day, and you say to yourself, boy, I wish I would have said this differently and go back and do things differently, as I'm sure I will have during our conversation here. And that's how
we do that on a weekly basis.
That's how I define good golf architecture. A course that gives you the opportunity to ask different questions of how do I play this golf hole? If I only hit this shot next time away from this hazard, if you hit it into, let's say, a center line bunker, how do I navigate this differently, next time? And I'm assuming you guys are also millennials, and we had those choose your own adventure books back in the day.
You assume wrong, sir. Although we did have choose your own adventure books back in the day. We're more Gen Xers.
All right. So at any rate, we had the choose your own adventure. So those are books you go back, you read again and again, looking for a different ending, right? And that's kind of how we play golf. And I think poetically, we like going back, playing the same courses again and again. It gives you that creative freedom to play different shots, different pins. Like 7 at Olympic is, I was talking with, Greg. I love that bunker on 7. That green is phenomenal. It's such a fun hole to play. And you could play that hole probably 8 different ways and, maybe pull your hair out on a number of them. But there's so many shots that you make on these great golf courses like Olympic and like Cypress and Augusta that keep you coming back, keeps you coming back for more.
Love it. David Rawlinson, thank you very much for joining us here on Weekday Golf.
Thanks for having me, gentlemen.
We appreciate it.
Thanks, David.
Okay. What did you think about that?
Other than now I've got Nickelback in my mind.
I feel like Nickelback catches a lot of flack, man. I kind of like some Nickelback songs. Sorry, people that hate Nickelback. It's like famously
Um,
maligned as a band, right? Like, what's the deal?
have you seen that SNL skit? There's like an old woman on her deathbed and all her grandkids are with her. And it was revealed she was a Nickelback fan. And out of nowhere, she just starts singing,
No.
never made it as a blind. And like, it's a weird, but I think underrated skit. Anyway, do you feel like that changed your perspective?
Uh, um, I think I like the idea of golf course ratings a little less. Like,
Hmm.
I have such a different lens on it, and nothing to do with David. It's just like a much more, it's clearly like a pretty studied and cerebral craft.
Yeah.
Fair? Is that a fair way of saying that?
Yeah. But
Um,
with still a high amount of subjectivity.
I think that the subjectivity of it is so much more important to me. But like, there's people who love to get into golf course architecture.
Yeah.
And I kind of like know a great course when I see it or feel it. Maybe I would weight the rankings personally in a different way after having this conversation because there's so much that went into it that it just doesn't, it's not a language that I speak as well.
I kind of went in thinking, how do you judge art? Just basically
Yeah,
the exact topic that David teed up. And
right.
I think the answer is you can't really, but it, I think it did sharpen for me some elements of courses that I definitely don't proactively think about. So it'll be interesting to see if I notice things in a different way.
David is going to see things on a course that I don't. You're going to see
Yeah.
things on a course that I don't. And like that's okay. I think you said it well. It's like how do you judge art? It's kind of in the eye of the beholder. And like I think it's great if somebody thinks my golf course is great. And quite
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
I prefer playing the lake course every day than, if I had to play one of these frankly smaller golf courses. And like because, we go inside after the round and like boy, we see all our friends and like that's worth a lot more to me.
That's the big thing, which is looking at the overall experience. Right.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I did learn a lot. And honestly, I was
Mhm.
super fascinated with the methodology. Like, how do
Mhm.
you even go about doing this? And I think by definition, the methodology itself is open to interpretation. Right. Now, the one
Yeah.
thing I think is very clear is that I think we need to embark on a new business, which is the hang raiders.
Totally, man.
Let's
We're
do
coming to
that.
rate your hang.
And we're not going to tell you when we show up.
No. Although that was nice that they do tell the courses when they show up. So, anyhow, I'm glad to have understood the process more thoroughly. I don't know if it changed how I think about the general notion of rating golf courses or whether or not it's something that like does it matter more what somebody else thinks of it or does it matter what I think of it? And I think it's kind of like what I think of it in my
Well,
opinion.
ultimately, yes, but it's fun to debate, and I think part of the
It's
one of
not fun
the
for me to debate. It's not fun. It may be fun for
okay,
you and it may be fun for
yeah,
others. I don't find a lot of value in it.
I think it's fun to be like, hey, I loved that course was so awesome because of the routing or something, and you're like, okay, that didn't make an impact on me, but I loved the green quality. Those are just the little nuances of the game that we all
Yeah.
have our own opinions on.
The one thing I thought was cool though, like the idea of contour, right? So you think about our course and how I think I already thought about this, but how it uses the hill going away from the
Right.
top. And something stood out to me when we hosted the congressional guys in 2022. I was on the fourth green of Ocean, and Brian Neely said to me, as one of the congressional buddies of ours, "This is amazing." Like, and we're playing the Ocean course, which we kind of think of as like it's certainly the course that you and I play less. It's a great golf course, but he was like, you can't get this. Like you could take any square acreage of land in the DMV region and maybe make a course like congressional, but like you can't build what we have. You can't build views. Like views, like
Yeah,
that's something you can't construct.
that's right. I also do appreciate the artistry of, hey, here's a person who's like looking over all these acres and being like, this is how I see this
Yeah,
course unfolding. Like
totally.
that's an
That's
awesome skill from my perspective. They are
Hey,
true
don't ask me
artistes.
to be your golf course architect, anybody that's listening. I'm not your guy.
No, but if you want an opinion on a shower,
Ah.
we know where to go.
And if you want somebody to tell you whether or not your hang is good, we might be your guys.
We will work on the naming and branding of that, but that'll be another day. All right, buddy.
All right, man. Thank you.
Next week, Preston goes inside the PGA Championship at Aronimink with Jason Susi and the Olympic Club 2028 Leadership Group. Your quick reaction?
No, it was a city. The volunteers, the kitchens, transportation, merch operation, TV compound, all the back of house stuff. It honestly blew me away.
You were like Jane Goodall taking field notes in the mist.
Yes, and by the end of it, the quote gorillas unquote, I was just exhausted.
Next week on Weekday Golf.
Weekday Golf is produced by Armageddon Partners, LLC. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter/X. Let us know what you want to hear about at weekdaygolfpodcast@gmail.com.